Welcome to the Talking HealthTech podcast. My name is Peter Birch. Today on the show, I'm joined by Dr. Greg McDavitt, Physician Executive and Director of Healthcare Industry Strategy at ServiceNow, and Andrew Dome, Chief Digital Information Officer at Uniting New South Wales ACT. And today we're talking about the hidden tax on healthcare, and not the tax that you might think on a financial side, but the one that's creeping through and impacting efficiency and time and focus on a daily basis for the industry. Gents, how are we going?
Yeah, really good. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you here on the show. And look, I might actually start by getting you both to introduce and tell us a bit more about what you do. So, Andrew, firstly, tell us about you and the work that Uniting does.
Yeah, sure. So Andrew Dome, Chief Digital Information Officer at Uniting New South Wales ACT. We really provide two services. We have senior services, which a lot of people refer to as aged care, and that includes retirement living, independent living, and residential aged care. And the majority of people really recognise us as providing those services. We provide about 27,000 customers those services every year, but actually we have a community side as well, and that includes things like mediation, counselling services, and early learning services as well. We have 54 early learning centres throughout those two states as well. So we currently serve about 148,000 customers per year. We have 12,500 employees providing those services. So very, very important services in the community. And we also have a mantra, and that is to disrupt entrenched disadvantage. So a lot of our customers are really disadvantaged people, including people like First Nations and Aboriginal customers and clients that we serve. So very broad in terms of the services that we provide.
Very important work, and grateful to have you on this episode. Greg, what about yourself?
Yeah, I work at ServiceNow, and as a company, we provide technology to major enterprises around the world. My responsibility inside of ServiceNow is to develop and mature our strategy in terms of the problems that we solve, the challenges that we solve specific to healthcare. So a lot of our technology is horizontal. Think IT, HR, a lot of these other non-specific operations that happen in almost any business. And then we have very specific challenges that we try to address within the healthcare ecosystem for payers, providers, life science companies, medical technology. And that's where my role sits. So day to day, I work with our customers to really dive into the challenges they're seeing, the challenges that I see still as a practitioner, and say, how do we use some of our technology to solve that?
I love that we've framed this conversation around the hidden tax on care, not because I love tax, but because it's something that I guess we all kind of inherently feel, but there's an element of intrigue and I guess definition to it as well. So perhaps some framing from you both. Firstly, when I say there's this hidden tax on care at the moment, Andrew, what does that mean to you?
Oh, well, the hidden tax for us is really our frontline employees. So they are tasked, and what they really want to do every day is provide aged care services to our customers. And unfortunately, there are other tasks that they need to do their job. And that can be things like creating a progress note or an update report or filling out forms around incidents. And what we wanted to do as an organisation is really remove that administration burden. And we've got a mantra at Uniting, which is we want to hold the hand and not the pen. So that's really what that hidden tax is. It's removing the administration burden, giving time back in their day so that they can look after our customers and negate as much of that administration burden as we can. So take those tasks, those transactional activities, which are 15 and 20 minutes per day currently, and really make them 1 to 2 minutes. So that gives 13 to 15 minutes back in our day for our 9,000 frontline workers to actually look after our customers and clients.
And Greg, what about yourself? You'd be seeing this across everywhere that we work in healthcare.
Yeah. So agree with Andrew. That's I see that on the clinical side of my life, and a lot of tasks that I have to perform or other providers have to perform that are really non-value add when it comes to patient care delivery. They don't change anything about the care plan. They don't change anything about the outcome that the patient receives. It is just an organizational activity that creates friction for all of us. I would take it one step further than Andrew mentioned and say yes to everything he said. Also, I think the unseen tax here is on all the ancillary as well. So everything that we do in the clinical space gets passed on to somebody, right? I write a document, I create an order, I do all these things. That flows down to somebody else, whether it's in the revenue cycle department with billing and claims, whether it's in IT, because now all of a sudden they have data that we are creating and interfaces that have to be maintained. All of these interactions create additional burden that is even more unseen. The specific level, though, is really where Andrew was talking about, saying, we have 2-3 hours a day per clinician that have nothing to do with healthcare.
Yeah. It makes it hard if it's unseen by definition. Then I guess if you can't see it, then it's hard to measure and then quantify, except you feel it on a day-to-day on the front line right up through the organization. And it's almost like, if purely on there might be someone that's familiar on the technology side, familiar with, technology debt, or even when they're implementing a change, there's always like a slow learning curve. But as you kind of touched on, I'm interested to get Andrew's perspective on this, in that it's, healthcare has been delivered and care generally has been delivered for a long time. But do you feel that this burden, this tax is kind of constantly just remaining the same, or are we seeing that ramp as we're bringing in new things like new processes and new technologies? Is it doing this, or is it doing this, or is it about the same?
So I think the tax has always been there, and our job as an organisation is certainly in my team in digital technology is trying to remove or eliminate as much of that tax as possible. But we've got other challenges as well, which is things like workforce crisis. We don't have enough aged care workers, so there's a tax associated with that. So how do we get around that? And what we want to do as an organisation is create technology or tools to make their job easier. So like I said before, taking those 15, 20-minute transactions, making it a 1 to 2 minute transaction, giving time back in the day, look after our customers. And what does that actually mean? It's removing that tax. It's making Uniting as an employee of choice. They want to come and work for Uniting because they realise that we've got these tools. But more importantly is retaining that talent as well, because we're in a very competitive market. We don't have a large number of nurses and doctors that we can use. So any means that we can bring in technology and tools to attract people to Uniting and then retain them, it's just going to be a massive plus to us.
Yeah. I'd love to understand some examples of that, because you mentioned there's an appeal of saving 1 or 2 minutes here, or shaving off some time, and that could be good in isolation. Do these things really add up? Like, talk me through what that actually looks like on a day-to-day if you were to implement some of these.
Yeah, I'll give you a really good example. So I've been at Uniting for 2 years, and my first 2 weeks I went out and went to site visits. The very first aged care site I went to, it was 9 a.m. I had to tailgate someone on the door because I couldn't get in. The site manager was busy. They were busy dealing with a dementia customer. So I saw firsthand what the experience was like. And what actually played out over the next half an hour was that dementia customer became a bit irate. It actually ended in them becoming physical, not towards a care worker, but just around pulling over a brochure stand. And I reached out to the site's manager at the time and said, what's going to happen now? How's that going to play out in terms of the next activities? And they said, well, an incident needs to be raised. I'd already gone around and seen the setup there. There were 3 kiosk machines for servicing 120 care workers. The care worker that saw that would have to go upstairs. They would have to log onto a device. They would have to create an incident in a system. And that, again, is going to turn into a 20-minute activity. And I thought to myself at the time, bear in mind this is 2 years ago, if I could turn that activity into a 1 to 2 minute activity by giving them the tools to do this on their phone rather than a kiosk machine, they can then do that incident, voice to text, put it into that system, incident system, and then move on. And again, that's going to give time back in the day to look after that dementia customer better. So it's an uplift in the quality of care, and it's just a better outcome or result all round. And that's what we've been working on over the last 2 years, that type of tool to return time back in the day.
Great example. Greg, I reflect on why we do some of these things, and sometimes the irony is not lost on me that I guess a lot of the burden that's introduced into a care setting can be there because of inefficient or bad processes or technology that's there. And so it's a bit rich to say, well, technology is going to solve these problems when technology has been the issue that kind of is the reason. Like, there might be clinicians that feel like, I'm just a slave to this computer because all I'm doing is entering data, and that's the reason why I'm taking so long. So what's your take on, this idea that technology can alleviate the burden when we're running the risk of technology actually creates all the issues?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think I'll start off with an example, right? So that's a perfect question and illustrated by the EMR. We were all sold a bill of goods when the EMR started 20, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. We said, this will make it better. And I said, well, without it, I don't actually have to document that much. So maybe we should get rid of it. There are a lot of great things that come with the EMR, right? Our document repositories and tracking abilities are infinitely better than without it, right? We didn't have that ability before. But as a result, regulations creep in and other requirements creep in, and then we keep adding into that space and saying, oh, well, while you're there, do X, Y, and Z. So a well-intentioned digital tool actually created a lot of complexity. And I think that happens a lot. We find a tool that may solve or be directed at a specific business, operational, or clinical challenge, but we operate kind of in a silo when we put it into practice, and then it creates other undue burdens. It may resolve a problem for one group of people. It may unintentionally create a problem for another group of people as a result of that. So, I think that's just almost human nature, though. Like, how do we fix that? I don't know the answer to that. I just know we do it because we see a problem. We say, I can fix that problem. The water's leaking. I can close that pipe. Well, if I close that pipe, what happens upstream? I don't know. Versus where we're at now, I think we have a much bigger opportunity in where technology is now. So Andrew and I were sitting around chatting before we started, and he's showing me some of the tools that they're using at Uniting, and they're thinking very progressively, saying, how do we connect the entire enterprise around the caregivers that are delivering care to our residents, right? 10 years ago, we said things like that, but the technology didn't do that, right? So I think we're in this really kind of sweet spot in healthcare with all of the technology and data investment that we've made over the last several decades. And then with AI, generative and agentic AI really coming into their own, and us being comfortable operating in that space now after a few years, that instead of just applying a technology solution to a bad workflow, we can fundamentally change the way that we perform that work operation, or even remove it entirely, right? Because that's the ideal in my mind, right? Don't just digitize a bad process; just get rid of it, right? Let the computers do it. Do something. Like, I don't want to do it a different way. I just don't want to do it. So, and I think that's where we're at now. And I think that's a really big opportunity in healthcare.
Yeah. I remember hearing in a previous podcast episode, but the one way to truly see in any care setting what the real processes are, or where the gaps are in processes, is to look where all the Post-it notes are, because that's kind of, the stop gaps that people have put in place to circumvent or to just get the job done. Andrew, I imagine you kind of, it's an interesting, take on what Greg said too, where, quite a while ago, you couldn't really take a full enterprise view at addressing a particular workflow problem because things didn't connect, or maybe you don't even have the technology. The technology doesn't exist to do that. But on one hand, we need to fix problems as they come up. How do you go about this kind of dual approach of, you want to empower and focus on particular workflows or issues that need to be addressed at a local level, but you also at the same time don't want to push the problem further down the line? How do you take this approach of addressing these issues at scale?
Yeah, so the first thing that we did as an organization is, and this is really, really crucial, I think, is when you start looking at things like Gen AI and these tools, is it can't be IT led. It's not IT saying we've got Gen AI, we've got a platform, let's just throw it out the business and see what sticks. What we did is we started with the business and said, well, what are these fundamental business problems you've got, and we can try and resolve them. And we went out to both our directorates, our senior services and our community directorates. We brought in the heads of, we brought in the frontline workers, and they came up with these 50 pain points. We ran hackathons, and it's funny you say, the post-it notes. We did a hackathon and we had all these post-it notes, and we came down with sort of 10 use cases, and then we looked at them and said, well, what is going to be the best value benefit for our frontline workers right now and ease to bring in production? We created that first use case, and then we worked on subsequent use cases since then as well. But it's engaging with the business. And the other key point around all of this is you could create the most wonderful AI platform, but if it's not easy to use and it's not intuitive, particularly around some of the demographic in our organization that we are, dealing with, some of our workers are getting close to the customers that they are serving in terms of age, right? So they're not digital native. So we had to kind of step back and said, right, how can we make this a really intuitive, easy experience? So we peeled it all back. We made a platform that was, tile-based. But my nirvana is just to have a platform where it's all voice to text. It simply has one field or text, like a Google ChatGPT question. Everything is done on voice to text, and the employee simply says, tell me what my leave balance is, or here is the progress note for Mary Smith in room 201, and it's all done at the point of care. The content is clear in their head. It's captured. You're not losing anything, but making it really easy and intuitive. And just coming back to those post-it notes, we rolled out that platform to 1,000 of our employees in home and community care. And it's really interesting now. We are going back and revisiting, and all those post-it notes that they used to have around the office, they're all gone.
Yeah.
Because we've made it easy and intuitive enough for them to remove the post-it note as a platform choice.
Pete, can I add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, we were talking a little bit before we started, and just the ability for any individual in the organization to make a request. There's a problem. I need something. I want something. Something needs to be done. They don't need to know where it goes. That's one of the challenges in this administrative burden, the hidden tax, is that I all of a sudden need to know who to talk to solve that problem. And in a very large organization, it's pretty unlikely that I know who that person is. Even if you are in a specific location within a large organization and there's only 50 or 100 employees in that location, you may not know who is responsible for the request you're about to make. You shouldn't need to know that. And we're getting smart enough now to actually address that tax. But if you don't have the technology in place to orchestrate that request, to just put it in common language, right? Whether it's voice or a chat, text, however you want to put it in. The point is that the systems are smart enough to take that request and you just ask it and forget it, right? Move on with your day. Go on to seeing the patient, dealing with the dementia resident, right? That Andrew was talking about. But instead, 20 minutes, half an hour, however long, I got to go put in an issue. And I don't even know where that issue goes. Like after they put it in, who picks it up? I don't know. But I know I had to do it. So there's levels to the hidden tax that we're talking about.
Well, yeah, thinking about, cancelling that tax, let's say, and the tools that we've got in the arsenal to do that, and it sounds like artificial intelligence is well placed to assist. I imagine there's a lot of people that's these days engaging with AI generative tools in their day-to-day, or being approached by them as well, and interacting with them just in what they do. And some people may have some really great experiences with it, and others feel like this is dehumanizing, or it just doesn't understand what I'm doing and can feel a bit rogue. How do we kind of best harness the potential that exists around, utilizing AI and really honing in on some of these examples? I think you've touched on a couple of examples, Greg, but help me unpack a bit more understanding the role that AI has in starting to reduce that burden a bit more.
Yeah. I think one of the key values is that AI, whether it is generative, or even before generative, right? Like there's other intelligent tools out there, right? That are more like machine learning or just robotic process automation. And then we got into generative. Now we're in this agentic space. And we're getting more advanced. Pretty soon we're going to go like agent to agent, right? Like you're going to have multiple agents talking to each other. The technology is advancing very quickly, which, is I think just an important point to always recall. Like we don't know what's going to exist in terms of opportunity. But right now, I would say, one of the big advantages is that the AI has, vastly, significantly more potential to understand your enterprise than any single human does, right? Like, I'll steal your example again. The fact that when Andrew showed up and the first site he went to, he identified this one problem with all the issues that are probably in his system, it probably shows up often. It's like, well, how come there are 500 of these same issues happening and that all equals 20 minutes, 30 minutes per issue? And hypothetically, the AI would be able to identify that, but then at scale and say, it's not just that one issue. It's also just not in the, in theater, in the facilities. It's in different parts, different business units all across the enterprise, right? What are our inefficiencies and challenges in HR for onboarding a clinician to see patients in these facilities, right? Or in their homes, to have people go out and help in their homes. How long does it take us? And why does it take us so long? AI has way more capacity to actually analyze that and dig into it than we ever will.
I think, just building on that, though, it's when people talk about how AI is always increasing and it's getting smarter, and people often refer to generative or agentic AI as here's a PhD level kind of capability. But if I was to ask a lot of the PhD students I know are the most disorganized individuals, super intelligent and really focused on a particular skill, but then everything is everywhere and you try and get them to get somewhere on time and they're not going to do it. I think the real unlock is, to your point, Greg, around understanding your particular organization. So I guess, Andrew, that contextual piece, I guess that's what it might be, is going to be the real critical point, because I think, like you touched on before, being able to not just address an issue in a department or for a particular individual, but have the intelligence at scale customized or tailored to Uniting's, workspace. That's where the real unlock is going to be. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does. And, like I said, when we looked at our journey sort of 18 months, 2 years ago, we had these conversations with all of our areas within the business. So it wasn't just the customer-facing directorates, communities and senior services. So we sat down with people experience, which is HR. We sat down with property. We sat down with finance. And we really wanted that holistic view of how can we best use AI to solve those problems that you've got right now. And it's a continued story and review. So 2 years ago, we came up with the 50 down to the 10 use cases. And just a couple of months ago, we looked at those 10 use cases and said, are they still valid? The first 2 were, because they're the ones we put into production. The other 8, we're looking, there's much better use cases of AI to give value to our employees and to our customers right now. So it's evolving at such a pace, AI and agentic AI and what we can do with it. You constantly need to review whether those use cases that you want to put into production are still valid. And the guardrails are changing as well, because AI is going so quickly. We had an ethical conversation with our board 12 months ago around what would we allow AI to do in our organization. And we gave a whole bunch of use cases. And one of the use cases was the creation of a care plan using AI to create that for a customer. 12 months ago, the board said no. Fast forward 12 months, now they're saying, yeah, let's have a look at that, because they're more comfortable around what AI can do. They're seeing the value and the benefits and the uplift that the experience is going to give our employees, but ultimately the better experience is going to give them care to our customers. So it's a constant reevaluation of the ask, the benefits, what the use cases are with your business, and we'll continue to do that. And that ethical conversation, by the way, we've booked that in. That's going to happen every single year with our board and our executives to see whether we still are on the right track and whether we need to change things and change direction.
Yeah. And I think you said before, Andrew, that it's this isn't just an issue for the CIO or the IT side of things to deal with. This impacts everyone at a board or an executive level. So, your CFO, your chief financial officer is going to be looking at the cost to implement and see technology as a cost, maybe, as opposed to something else, which we can unpack in a sec. But then also the impact on the employees and the HR side. So, I can't think of a more relevant topic right now across the board at all executive levels than this of how best to utilize artificial intelligence to really have an impact.
Yeah, and if I think of the CFO, so they're going to want a return on investment, right? And so it's probably actually one of the more difficult things to realize or work out, calculate, is everyone has an AI vision. I think I saw a stat from Gartner the other day. I think 80% of AI proof of concepts that get to that stage stop because it's hard to convince the board or the executives around the ROI at that stage. We were quite lucky. I got a very supportive executive team and also board. And what I did very early on when we did our first use case, I took them up to Microsoft's offices because they were partnering up with the co-design, showed them the value of this, showed them the voice to text. They saw the benefits, showed them the collaboration with a strategic partner like Microsoft, who obviously has a real big say in OpenAI and investment in OpenAI, and they got it. They got it straight away. So that really, really helped. But, to your point, it is very cross-functional across all of the directors, and you need to get them all on board, get them involved in the conversation, and bring your board in as well. Remember, your board members, they're sitting on other boards, and they're having the same conversation around value of AI, ROI, and get them to input into the conversation, because that's what they like doing. It's not all about risk. Risk is very high for a board member, but it's also around what value and benefit are we going to get out of it. So bring them into that conversation early as well.
Yeah. I feel like that's the age-old question, right? Is it a cost or is it an investment? And that's something I'm sure, Greg, you've seen as well too, the conversation of utilizing technology and how best to really demonstrate that by investment into some of these tools, it moves it somewhere else on the P&L, so the CFO can really justify that.
Yeah. And, sometimes, it's like Andrew said, sometimes that's harder to see. For example, if you just look at time back for clinicians and saying, hey, if we use some sort of intelligent tool for auto dictation and note transcription, I still employ the same number of clinicians. I still like my headcount didn't change. My tech stack didn't change. I gave my clinicians 2 hours to their day back, but my overhead costs actually went up because now I had to buy this new technology. Yeah, that's true. Do you see 2 hours worth of 2 hours more worth of patients? Probably not. But can you give more time to each individual patient? Do you create a stronger relationship with all of these residents at Uniting or in a large health system in an acute care setting? I was with a customer a couple weeks ago, and they actively have ambient listening tools in their clinics, and the customers, the patients, they said, I don't know what changed, but it feels different here. And what they changed was the doctor turned away from the computer and the nurse turned away from the computer and just had a conversation. Same outcome. It's not like it's going to change the medication I prescribe you or the treatment or the therapy, whatever it is, but the interaction changed, and that affinity for those patients to come back again because of that experience changed dramatically. Now all of a sudden it was more of a pleasure to be there. That's hard to quantify. Who knows what that's going to bring versus, can I increase my throughput because I have 2 more hours? Yeah, I can probably see another patient 2, 3 a day. Do I want to? Maybe. Depends on the day.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Because you will, every organization right up through to, be it management, leadership, executive board, all want to be able to measure the impact of any initiative that's been invested in. So we'll need those measures to look at. And while on one hand, it's an issue that impacts everyone, because I feel like if you're a board or executive, if you're any organization and you're not considering what role AI plays in, it's almost an irresponsible position to take right now because there's all this opportunity. So it's certainly front of mind, but if it's impacting everyone, at the same time, someone's also got to own it, I feel like. So I'm interested in your take, Andrew. Like, who owns this ultimately, in your view, in terms of what steps we're taking within an organization to implement some of these innovative tools, and how do we best assist them in terms of demonstrating that return on investment through measures? And like in that example, patients might be having a better experience, or there's better retention around employees. I feel like there's probably some kind of measures that can demonstrate this.
Well, I think we all own it. So across all the directorates, the directors, I own components of that as well, because I'm responsible for the platform and making sure that it's operational. The CEO owns it. If you don't have the buy-in from the CEO, by the way, it's not going to be out there. It's not going to be implemented and delivered. So we've all got a real strong role to play, making sure that AI is set up, it's delivered, it's implemented, it's ethically implemented, it's responsible use of AI, and we've got the buy-in from the board. So I think that's kind of really crucial, and it's something which we've taken on board, and that's why we actually have checkpoints regularly at Uniting, is to understand that we're still on the right path, it's delivering value and benefit, and we're getting the results that we want. It's interesting at Uniting, though, we are a non-for-profit, right? So I was in a panel conversation yesterday with banks. Their value of AI and the outcomes is very different from a non-for-profit. They will be looking at return on investment in terms of FTE headcount savings, reduction in operational costs, all that good stuff. And I get it. That's the sector that they play in. And, there's a lot of media, I guess, exposure around lost jobs and so forth. I can tell you, Uniting, we don't have that view at all. We're very much around augmenting tasks and activities with AI to supplement the work that our employees do. So we don't want to get rid of people at all. We want to give time back on their day so that they can offer additional care to our customers, provide a high level of care, so better quality of care as well, and give time back on the day to really looking after our customers and think about more strategic things they can do as well. So it does depend on the sector, actually. And the non-for-profit, we are part of an aged care group with 24 other providers, and that's how we all think. Yeah. So it will depend on the sector you play in.
Yeah, I agree. But Greg, you would see as well. I mean, and in all the conversations I've had around the role of artificial intelligence and what we're doing this for, no one of a sound view anyway is taking the view that we're implementing all of these tools so we can replace the clinicians and have everyone have their healthcare delivered by robots. I feel like there's so much that needs to be done in health and aged care right now, and the opportunity that exists in artificial intelligence, and that's really where the focus is right now. But what's your take on it?
Very similar. I do have, I think AI tools will eventually replace some roles. I think it's inevitable. Could be 50 years from now. But at some point, you just start to realize that computers are better at things than humans, some things than humans are. And so do we need to have the same roles anymore? Probably not. I think that will happen eventually. But the reality of where we live today, like if you take an organization like Uniting or an acute care hospital system, there's such a shortage of people today. And the pipeline of clinicians is not making up for the shortage, right? It's actually exacerbating between the aging population and the number of caregivers that you're going to need. We're already short, and the number of people coming through schools is not making up for the gap, right? So we live in a world where we have to do more with less. So the critical people that are there right now and coming through in the next decade are still going to be critical. What we don't want them to have to do is do everything else because we don't have enough people. So we need to use technology, not just AI, but just any technologies that we can across the enterprise to alleviate the everything else burden off of all of these teams. And so, I don't think we're going to fire people. No. We don't have enough people to begin with. Over time, I do think entire industries, roles within healthcare will be replaced. I think that will happen. just like it does in any industry, right? But I don't think we're going to look at this and say, well, we're going to lay off, 400 care workers because they're no longer relevant. Like right now, we don't have the capacity to make up for it with tech, and tech can't do the things that the humans need to be doing. So
I just think, just to add to that as well, I think it's a generational, question. So I think someone who's 80, 85 in a residential aged care environment, do they want a robot to be dispensing medication to them? Probably not. They want to have a conversation with that person as well. But you think about someone who's in their 20s and 60 years' time, who's come through that digital age and digital native, they obviously refer to sometimes, they may be more willing to do it because that's the technology that was around in their 20s and they're more used to it. In saying that, I still think the person, the connectivity, that conversation, people still want to have that conversation with the human. So I think we're a long way off in terms of robots replacing, but meaning those tasks where it's just a dispensation of sort of prescription and medications that could be done in the future. I think in Japan, that technology exists now. And in fact, I know in Japan, they also have got robots providing a sort of human type response for people in home and community care. So I think there could be a generational change, but it's probably decades off.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's so true about tasks will change, roles will evolve, but in the end, the humans still want to engage with humans in some capacity. I know when I I was going to choose a particular grocer then, but I'll just say a grocery store then, I'll preference the self-serve checkout over the in-person thing, but I'll definitely want a human there for when the self-serve checkout thinks that I'm stealing a packet of chips or something when I'm not actually, but I'm not in my 20s, but there's the evolving nature of those roles in every industry that we'll see. Lastly, as we start to close out the conversation, firstly, Andrew, I'd love to get your take on, say we start getting a lot of these things right and we get this traction. Where are you seeing the ball going from a uniting perspective and maybe even more broadly across care as we implement some of these tools?
Well, I think I sort of touched on it before. We've got a Gen AI platform. It's kind of one of the first in aged care. It enables people to do progress notes, voice to text. They can do it in their native language, converts it into English, puts it in the clinical system. That is giving those 1 to 2 hours back per day. But where we wanted to sort of lead to is just having that one digital front door, making the smartphone as the device of choice for our frontline workers. They're doing everything at the point of care. They're not doing it at the end of the day. They're doing it when they need to. Quality is better. It's in the right format. That's where we're leading to right now. And I just think in the future, it is just expanding on that, using robotics for certain things, which potentially some workers don't want to do. And it could be things like cleaning toilets in a residential aged care site. Robot can do that. So I think in about 5 to 10 years' time, you'll see more of that kind of technology coming in. And with that, if I do think about dispensing, medication, a robot with the right training and technology should get it 100%. So you're removing errors. So there's a lot more that can be done in our space. I'm starting to see it coming through. But ultimately what we want to do is reduce kind of human error, make things faster, better, more accurate, and ultimately really still having humans providing frontline services and spending more time with our customers. That's our goal, making it really easy to do their job and returning time back to look after our customers.
Yeah, doing more of those human things. I feel like that's going to be pretty critical. Greg, lastly, anything from you around like the broader directionally where you see industry going as we implement more of these tools? Yeah,
I think that over time we're going to evolve from like human assisted inputs for requests on this administrative burden. And eventually I think we're going to get closer and closer to fully automated, where a human doesn't even need to make the request anymore. The system, meaning the enterprise, the interconnectedness of our business will recognize the needs that are required by our teams, right? Some of them that we talked about today probably couldn't be replaced by a fully automated, a fully intelligent system, but some of them can be, right? So when we talk about clinical documentation and things like that, we probably need somebody for at least a good long while to say what is happening. But eventually, could we live in a world where, we have sensors and other devices picking up information that it's tracking what is actually occurring, and it becomes the log and the record of how care was delivered? Maybe. I think more reasonable, though, is that, in the enterprise, if you had, I'll use Uniting, if you had a spill or something in a room, a sensor could see that automatically. You don't need anybody to tell somebody else to come clean that up. The interconnectedness of the systems will register that issue, log that issue, dispatch someone or something to go fix it. And when it's done, the sensors also see, oh, it was done. You don't need somebody to go in and click a button and say issue resolved, right? Today, that's kind of how we do it. That's the world we live in. I think, though, as we become more intelligent and our environment becomes more intelligent around us, that administrative burden should, in my opinion, shrink dramatically.
Now, looking forward to that future, and it's been great to get a bit of a look at how things are being done now and directionally where they're going and seeing it firsthand from Uniting's perspective as well. So we'll definitely make sure the details for ServiceNow and Uniting are in the show notes of this episode for people to check out and learn more, and they're up on our website too. But Greg, Andrew, I really appreciate you making the time today. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for having us.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Talking HealthTech. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this episode with someone who might find it valuable. For more information and resources about healthcare innovation, visit talkinghealthtech.com.